The obsidian table gleamed under the ambient lights of the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber on Veros Prime. Captain Elena Graves sat rigid in her chair, her military uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes of the alien diplomats surrounding her. For 3 days, she had maintained her composure as the Council representatives debated the future of Earth's place in the galactic community. But the tension in the air had grown palpable as they entered what the Virari called the 6th hour of negotiations. Ambassador Victor Hall sat beside her, his diplomatic veneer barely concealing his own growing concerns. The rest of Earth's negotiation team, tactical advisors, economic specialists, and cultural attachés, flanked them in a semicircle of united human presence. But Elena felt increasingly isolated as the hours dragged on. Councillor Drellis, the tall, azure-skinned Virari representative, rose from his seat at the head of the council table. His 6-fingered hands pressed flat against the obsidian surface as he leaned forward, pupilless eyes fixing on the human delegation. The Council has deliberated extensively on the provisions necessary to ensure lasting peace, Drellis announced, his melodic voice carrying a cold undercurrent. In addition to the previously discussed limitations on human colonization efforts, we must insist on the following non-negotiable terms. A holographic document materialized above the table, text scrolling in multiple languages. Elena's eyes narrowed as she scanned the Galactic Standard Translation. Complete demilitarization of all Earth outposts beyond your solar system, Drellis continued. Reduction of your defense budget by 60%. Immediate cessation of all direct military interventions in border planets. Council oversight of all human deep space vessels. Ambassador Hall leaned toward Elena, whispering, "This wasn't what we discussed in preliminary talks. They're moving the goalposts." Elena nodded almost imperceptibly, her military training keeping her expression neutral even as anger surged through her. The terms were impossible. They would leave Earth and its colonies defenseless, their sovereignty in tatters. Furthermore, Drellis continued, his thin lips stretching into what might have been a smile on his alien face. Earth will provide annual tribute of 6% of its gross planetary production to fund the Council's peacekeeping initiatives. A murmur spread through the Earth delegation. This wasn't a peace treaty. It was a surrender document. Elena understood with sudden clarity that they had been deceived from the beginning. The Galactic Council had no intention of treating humanity as equals. These peace talks were nothing but an elaborate trap, designed to neutralize Earth's growing military presence in the galaxy. She caught Victor's eye and saw that he had reached the same conclusion. Humanity had saved the Council during the Trivar invasion just 3 years prior, and this was how they were repaid, with demands for subjugation disguised as peace. Elena made her decision. Under the table, she pressed a small communication device embedded in her uniform cuff, sending a pre-arranged signal to her executive officer aboard the ISS Aegis in orbit around Veros Prime. 3 short pulses. Prepare for immediate extraction. She rose to her feet, cutting off Drellis mid-sentence. The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to the human captain. The Earth delegation rejects these terms in their entirety, Elena stated, her voice firm and clear. We came here in good faith to negotiate a fair and equitable peace. Instead, you have presented us with terms of surrender that would compromise our basic right to self-defense. Drellis's expression darkened. Captain Graves, you overstep your authority. These terms have been carefully. Humanity withdraws from these peace talks, effective immediately. Elena continued, undeterred. We will not surrender our sovereignty, our security, or our future to appease your fear of our growing presence. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from a dozen worlds rose to their feet, voices overlapping in outrage or surprise. The Orycth delegation, insectoid beings with translucent wings, buzzed in agitation. The Junoan representatives, traditionally neutral, exchanged alarmed glances. Victor Hull stood beside Elena, lending his diplomatic weight to her military stance. "We remind the Council that Earth came to your aid during the Trivar crisis, when many of you stood paralyzed with indecision. We did not ask for your subjugation then. We will not accept ours now." Drelis's voice cut through the tumult. "If Earth withdraws from these negotiations, there will be consequences. Economic sanctions, at minimum. Perhaps a blockade of your trading routes." Elena met his gaze without flinching. "And if the Council attempts to enforce such measures, there will be consequences as well. We came seeking peace, Counselor, but we are prepared for other outcomes." She turned to her delegation. "We're leaving." As the human delegation filed out of the council chamber, Elena felt a weight settle on her shoulders. History would remember this moment, the day humans withdrew from peace talks with the most powerful political entity in the known galaxy. She had just set her species on a collision course with forces far older and more established than humanity. But as the massive doors of the chamber closed behind them, she knew she had made the only choice possible. Better to face the Council's wrath with dignity intact than to surrender humanity's future for a false peace. Their military shuttle waited in the diplomatic docking bay, guarded by a contingent of Earth's Marine Corps in full combat gear, a formality that now seemed prescient. As they boarded, Elena turned to Victor. "Send the message to Earth Command. Use the encrypted quantum channel. Tell them we're enacting Protocol Severed Shield." Victor nodded grimly. "I'll prepare a full diplomatic brief as well. They'll need to understand exactly what happened here." Elena took one last look at the gleaming spires of the council complex before the shuttle doors sealed shut. "They already know what happened here. Victor, we just became the newest threat to the galactic order." The shuttle accelerated away from Veros Prime, heading for the imposing silhouette of the ISS Aegis, humanity's most advanced warship and, potentially, their only safe passage home. As news of Earth's dramatic withdrawal from the peace talks spread across the galactic communication network, reactions varied wildly across different worlds. On the neutral planet of Ardentia, crowds gathered in public squares, their many-faceted eyes fixed on massive view screens, broadcasting fragmented reports from Veros Prime. The Ardentians, with their crystalline exoskeletons reflecting the light of their binary suns, had long maintained a careful neutrality in council affairs. But murmurs of support for the humans rippled through the gathered masses. Similar scenes played out on Helen, a water world whose amphibious inhabitants had historically suffered under council trade restrictions. In the floating cities of Helen's vast oceans, demonstrations broke out in support of Earth's defiance. The Helenites, with their iridescent scales and webbed appendages, raised makeshift human symbols alongside their own flags. Even on Tarkin, whose ruling elite had close ties to the Council, the common citizens whispered their admiration for the audacity of the young species from the spiral arm of the galaxy. Aboard the ISS Aegis, Elena strode onto the bridge, the weight of her decision evident in her measured steps, but not in her expression. The crew snapped to attention as she entered, their faces a mixture of tension and resolve. "Status report," she commanded, taking her position at the captain's chair. Commander Sarah Williams, her executive officer, stepped forward. "All systems operational. Captain, shields at full capacity. Weapon systems on standby. The shuttle carrying our diplomatic team has docked, and Ambassador Hall is making his way to the bridge." Elena nodded. "And the Council's response?" "Still in emergency session, according to our intelligence. No official statement yet, but there's increased activity among the Verari fleet in the outer system. They've repositioned 3 cruisers to monitor our orbital path." "Let them watch," Elena said. "I want our long-range communication arrays at maximum power. Prepare a broadcast to all Earth colonies and outposts. Priority Alpha. They need to know what happened and prepare for possible repercussions." As her orders were carried out, Elena activated her personal terminal, reviewing the contingency plans that Earth Command had prepared for just such a scenario. It had seemed paranoid at the time, preparing for a diplomatic breakdown with the Galactic Council, but now she was grateful for the foresight. The doors to the bridge slid open, and Ambassador Hall entered, his diplomatic uniform slightly rumpled after the hasty evacuation. He joined Elena at the command console. "I've contacted our allies on Ardentia and Helen," he reported. "They're sympathetic to our position but cautious about openly defying the Council. They've promised humanitarian assistance if needed, but military support is uncertain." Elena had expected as much. "We don't need their military support, Victor. What we need is their neutrality and their ports. If the Council tries to isolate us economically, we'll need alternative supply routes and trading partners." "I've emphasized that point," Victor assured her. "The Ardentian Chancellor owes me a favor from the Proxima negotiation, and the Hellenites have never forgiven the Council for the resource restrictions during their colonial expansion." Elena turned to the tactical display, studying the positions of the various planetary systems that might prove crucial in the coming days. "What about Tarkin's outer rim? Their merchant guilds control key hyperspace corridors." "The official stance will be pro-Council," Victor said, "but their smugglers' alliance will happily run blockades for the right price. I've already made preliminary overtures through appropriate channels." Elena allowed herself a small smile. For all his diplomatic polish, Victor had a practical understanding of the galaxy's less official power structures. It was why she had insisted he be part of this mission, despite Earth Command's preference for a purely military representative. "Captain," Commander Williams interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council chamber. Councillor Drellis is requesting to speak with you directly." Elena exchanged a glance with Victor. "Put it through, but on the main screen. I want the bridge crew to witness this." The obsidian face of Councillor Drellis appeared on the central display, his azure features composed but with a tension around his eyes that suggested barely controlled fury. "Captain Graves," he began without preamble, "your precipitous action threatens to destabilize years of careful diplomacy. The Council urges you to reconsider your withdrawal and return to the negotiation table, where we can address your concerns in a civilized manner." Elena stood straight, hands clasped behind her back in a formal military stance. "My concerns, Counselor, are with terms that would effectively end Earth's independence and security. There is nothing to reconsider." Drellis's expression hardened. "Then perhaps you should consider the consequences. The Council has unanimously voted to implement immediate economic sanctions against all Earth territories. Your trading vessels will be denied access to Council-affiliated ports, which, I remind you, constitute 80% of the established galactic market." "Unanimously?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "That's impressive efficiency for a body that took 3 months to approve emergency aid during the Proxima Nova crisis." A flicker of something, embarrassment, annoyance, crossed Drellis's features. "The threat of human militarism has a way of focusing attention. Captain, additionally, I must inform you that if the ISS Aegis attempts to leave the Vera system without returning to negotiations, it will be considered a hostile act." Victor stepped forward, entering the transmission field. "That would be a direct violation of diplomatic immunity. Counselor, our vessel carries a properly accredited Earth delegation under Section 7 of the Galactic Concordance, which the Council itself ratified." Drellis's gaze shifted to the ambassador. "Circumstances change. Ambassador Hall. The Council is prepared to invoke the emergency provisions of Section 12 in response to Earth's military posture." "A convenient interpretation," Victor replied coldly. "We will, of course, file a formal protest with the Galactic Registry." "File whatever you wish," Drellis said dismissively. "It changes nothing. You have 6 standard hours to return to the Council chamber, or face the consequences." The transmission ended abruptly, Elena turned to her tactical officer. Analysis of Ferrari fleet movements? Lieutenant Keller responded promptly. The 3 cruisers we detected earlier have been joined by 2 more vessels from the inner system. They're establishing a perimeter, but maintaining distance. Standard containment formation. Not yet attack positioning. They're posturing, Elena concluded. They don't want a direct confrontation any more than we do. At least not here, in the heart of Council space, where every civilized world would witness the aggression. But they can't afford to let us leave unchallenged either, Victor added. It would undermine their authority. Elena nodded. So they'll try to box us in, force us to make the first aggressive move. She turned to Commander Williams. Initiate silent running protocols, minimum energy signature, and contact our stealth corvette in the outer system, the Phantom. I want it ready to break atmosphere with our transmission package, if we're still being blockaded when Drellis's deadline expires. You're planning to slip a message out, Victor realized. More than a message, Elena replied. A complete record of these negotiations, including the Council's original promises and their subsequent betrayal. Every inhabited system should know exactly what happened here. As the crew carried out her orders, Elena returned to studying the tactical display. The Council had overplayed its hand, but the situation remained precarious. Earth and its colonies were scattered, vulnerable to isolation if the major hyperlanes were blocked. They needed allies, or at least sympathetic neutral parties willing to risk the Council's displeasure. Victor, she said quietly, how quickly can you reach out to your contact in the Ardentian Chancellery? Not through official channels. They'll be monitored now. The ambassador considered. I have a personal frequency that bypasses their main communications array. Chancellor Vex and I served together during the Trilaxian peace mission. She owes me her position, in a way. Good. We need more than humanitarian aid. We need fuel, ammunition, and intelligence support. The Ardentians have the best monitoring stations in the quadrant. Victor nodded. I'll make the call from my quarters. More deniability that way. As he left the bridge, Elena turned to Lieutenant Keller. Prepare a combat readiness drill. All fighter squadrons. Rotation exercises only. No weapons powered. I want the Ferrari to see our capabilities without giving them an excuse to claim provocation. Yes, Captain, Keller acknowledged, already inputting the commands. Elena returned to her captain's chair, feeling the weight of billions of lives, all of humanity across a dozen worlds, resting on her decisions. She had set them on this path by withdrawing from the peace talks. But she had no regrets. Better a honest confrontation than a deceptive peace that would have slowly strangled humanity's potential. As her ship hummed with preparation around her, Elena thought of Earth. So far away now, the blue-green world that had launched humanity to the stars. They had fought too hard, come too far, to surrender their destiny to the machinations of the Galactic Council. Whatever came next, humanity would face it on their feet, not on their knees. Within the Council's private chamber, far from public broadcasts and diplomatic niceties, an emergency session had descended into chaos. The Ferrari delegation, led by Councillor Drellis, dominated the center of the room, their azure skin flushed with darker hues of emotion as they gestured emphatically. The humans must be contained immediately, Drellis insisted, his normally melodic voice harsh with urgency. Their withdrawal is not merely an insult. It is a direct challenge to Council authority. If we allow them to simply leave, others will follow their example. Across the obsidian table, the insectoid Orycth representatives clicked their mandibles in agitation. Containment, yes, agreed Chief Delegate Sis, compound eyes gleaming. But direct military confrontation would be unwise. The ISS Aegis is a formidable vessel, even against our combined fleets. We need not destroy them, Drellis countered. Merely prevent their departure until they recognize the futility of resistance. From the far end of the table, a younger Junoan representative rose, Syndic Vera. her crystalline cranial ridges catching the light as she moved. Spoke with measured calm that contrasted with the tension filling the chamber. "Perhaps we should consider that our demands were excessive," she suggested. "Humanity has proven itself a valuable ally against the Trivar. Their intervention saved many Council worlds, including Virari colonies in the Orelon sector." Drellis turned on her, barely concealing his disdain. "Your youth betrays your naivety, Syndic Vera. The humans saved those colonies because it served their expansionist agenda. Their rapid military buildup since the Trivar conflict proves their true intentions." "Or perhaps it proves their reasonable caution," Vera countered. "They are a young species surrounded by much older powers. Would the Virari do any differently in their position?" Before Drellis could respond, the Tarkin representative interjected. High Commissioner Jor, his scaled face impassive, gestured toward the central data display. "While we debate intentions, the fact remains that the human vessel is preparing its systems. Our monitoring stations detect increased energy signatures consistent with pre-flight procedures." "They wouldn't dare leave against explicit Council instructions," Drellis said. But uncertainty had crept into his voice. "They have already defied explicit Council terms," Jor reminded him. "We should prepare for all contingencies." As the debate raged on, news of Earth's withdrawal from the peace talks was spreading across the galaxy's information networks. The official Council channels maintained rigid control of the narrative, emphasizing Earth's regrettable intransigence and refusal to commit to peaceful coexistence. But unofficial channels told a different story. The Phantom, Earth's stealth corvette hiding in Veros Prime's dense asteroid belt, had begun broadcasting the complete record of the negotiations, including the Council's original, moderate proposals and their subsequent, draconian demands. The broadcasts reached the neutral worlds first, where information controls were less stringent. On Ardentia, Chancellor Vex reviewed the transmission in her private chamber, her crystalline face reflecting the blue light of the holographic display. The evidence was damning. The Council, particularly the Virari faction, had deliberately sabotaged the peace process. She activated her secure communication system. "Connect me to Ambassador Hall on the Earth vessel," she instructed her aide. "Route through the old Trilaxian relays. Maximum encryption." Minutes later, Victor Hall's face appeared on her screen. "Chancellor Vex," he greeted her, relief evident in his expression. "Thank you for responding so quickly." "Your captain's decision was bold, Ambassador," Vex said without preamble. "Some would say reckless. Some would say necessary," Victor countered. "You've seen the records?" "I have." The Council overreached. She leaned closer to the screen. "Ardentia cannot officially oppose Council directives. Ambassador, you understand our position." "Of course," Victor nodded. "But perhaps there are unofficial avenues of support?" Vex's crystalline features shifted in what passed for a smile among her species. "Our emergency relief organization maintains substantial fuel reserves at the outer station, for humanitarian purposes, naturally, and our intelligence networks, purely defensive, you understand, may occasionally detect information of interest to your security." "Humanitarian aid and defensive intelligence," Victor repeated, matching her careful phrasing. "Earth would be grateful for such neutral assistance." "I will make the necessary arrangements," Vex promised. "But be warned, Drellis has already dispatched communiques to all major systems demanding compliance with the blockade. The Virari have significant influence in this sector." "And beyond this sector?" Victor asked. "The evidence you've provided is compelling. It is being shared through appropriate channels. Public opinion may not support the Council's position once the full story emerges." After ending the transmission, Victor made his way back to the bridge, where Elena was reviewing tactical projections with her senior officers. "Ardentia will help," he announced without preamble. "Unofficially, but substantively. Fuel, intelligence, possibly more if the situation escalates." Elena nodded. Good. We've received similar assurances from Helen. The Waterworlders have no love for the Council after the fishing rights dispute last cycle. And our time is running out, Commander Williams added, gesturing to the countdown displayed on the main screen. Less than 2 hours before Drellis's deadline expires. Elena studied the tactical display, where the 5 Ferrari cruisers maintained their containment pattern around the ISS Aegis. They're expecting us to make a run for the main hyperpoint, she mused. It's the obvious exit strategy. Lieutenant Keller nodded. Standard procedure would be to build up speed in system, then make the jump once we clear the gravitational interference from Veros Prime. Which is exactly why we won't do that. Elena decided. We'll use the slingshot maneuver instead. Her officers exchanged concerned glances. The slingshot maneuver was a high-risk tactic, using a planet's gravity well to accelerate a ship to jump velocity while remaining dangerously close to the planetary body. One miscalculation could send them crashing into the atmosphere or tearing apart from gravitational stress. The Ferrari won't expect it, Elena continued. They know our protocols, our standard evasion tactics. We need to do something unpredictable. It's risky, Captain, Williams cautioned. The gravitational fluctuations around Veros Prime are particularly volatile. We'd be operating with minimal safety margins. Which is precisely why they won't anticipate it, Elena replied. Begin calculations immediately. I want the maneuver plotted and ready when Drellis's deadline expires. She turned to Victor. Make sure our diplomatic logs are continuously broadcasting on all frequencies. If the Ferrari do open fire, I want every system in range to witness their aggression. As her crew prepared for the dangerous escape maneuver, Elena activated her personal terminal, recording a brief message to Earth Command. They needed to understand the full situation and prepare for the potential fallout. Earth and its colonies would need to mobilize, not for all-out war, but for a prolonged period of tension and possible isolated confrontations. While the ISS Aegis prepared its daring escape plan, an unexpected development was unfolding on the edges of Earth-controlled space. At Sigma Colony, a critical resupply station servicing Earth's outer mining operations, sensors detected the approach of unidentified vessels. Station Commander Jensen squinted at the grainy sensor readings. Configuration matches Ferrari light frigates, he reported to his security chief. No transponder signals, running dark. Council vessels? The security chief asked, already activating the station's minimal defensive systems. Officially, doubtful. The Council wouldn't launch an unprovoked attack on a civilian station. Jensen's expression hardened. Unofficially, this has Drellis written all over it. A demonstration of consequence, away from the diplomatic spotlight. Station shields at maximum, the security chief reported. But we're a supply depot, not a fortress. We can't withstand a determined assault. Jensen activated the emergency communication array. This is Sigma Colony declaring an emergency situation. Unidentified vessels approaching with hostile intent, requesting immediate assistance from any Earth forces in range. The message propagated through subspace, bouncing between relay stations. It would take hours to reach Earth, but less than 30 minutes to reach the Ardentian listening post at the edge of the sector. Chancellor Vex received the alert during her meeting with her Security Council. Without hesitation, she forwarded the information through the secure channel she had established with the ISS Aegis. On the bridge of the Aegis, Elena received the warning with grim validation. They're testing us, she told her officers. Attacking a supply station is a classic intimidation tactic, significant enough to demonstrate seriousness, remote enough to avoid major diplomatic consequences. Sigma Colony is defenseless, Commander Williams pointed out. Standard supply station shields, minimal point defense systems. And they're 4 hours from the nearest Earth patrol, Lieutenant Keller added. Elena's decision was immediate. Contact Commander Briggs on the Ardentian Defense Fleet. Call in the favor that Chancellor Vex offered, and prepare the Phantom for immediate jump to Sigma. It can't engage directly, but it can provide targeting data for the Ardentians. As her orders were carried out, Elena faced a critical realization. The confrontation she had anticipated was beginning sooner than expected. Not at Veros Prime, but at the edges of human territory. The Council, or at least the Verari faction, was eager to demonstrate the consequences of defying their authority. She turned to Victor. Our departure just became more urgent. We need to coordinate our forces, and we can't do that while boxed in here. Victor nodded grimly. Drellis is overplaying his hand. Attacking a supply station violates at least 3 sections of the Galactic Concordance. He's counting on our isolation, Elena replied. With Earth withdrawn from the peace process, he believes the Council can act with impunity. Her expression hardened. He's about to learn otherwise. With less than an hour remaining before the Council's deadline expired, Elena issued new orders. The slingshot maneuver would proceed as planned, but with an additional element, a broad-spectrum transmission to all Earth forces, activating Emergency Protocol Shattered Shield. It was a contingency plan developed after the Trivar conflict, designed to rapidly consolidate Earth's defensive capabilities in the event of a surprise attack. As the final preparations were made, Elena stood before the main viewport, gazing at the gleaming surface of Varos Prime below. The seat of the Galactic Council had been a symbol of unity and cooperation for millennia. Now, it represented something else entirely, the fragility of peace in a galaxy where power still ultimately spoke loudest. Captain, Commander Williams called. We're receiving a new transmission from the Council chamber. It's Syndic Vera, not Counselor Drellis. Elena raised an eyebrow in surprise. Put it through. The young Junoan's face appeared on the screen, her expression tense. Captain Graves, I'm contacting you without Council authorization. You should know that the Verari have dispatched vessels to Sigma Colony. Counselor Drellis intends to force your compliance through escalating pressure. We're already aware of the Sigma situation, Elena replied. Why are you telling us this, Syndic? Because not all Council members support these tactics, Vera said urgently. The Junoan delegation, along with several others, believes the demands presented to Earth were excessive. We are attempting to moderate the Council's response, but Drellis has consolidated significant support. I appreciate your candor, Elena said carefully. But words within the Council chamber mean little while our outposts are under attack. I understand your skepticism, Vera acknowledged. But know that there are those working to bring reason back to the Council's deliberations. The evidence you've distributed, the full record of the negotiations, is having an impact on neutral worlds. The transmission ended abruptly, likely to avoid detection by Council security protocols. Elena considered the implications. Division within the Council could work to Earth's advantage, but not quickly enough to prevent the immediate crisis. 30 minutes to deadline, Lieutenant Keller announced. Elena returned to her captain's chair. All hands to battle stations. Begin slingshot calculations. And send word to Commander Briggs. The Carrion-Solarian battle group is authorized to engage hostile forces at Sigma Colony. As klaxons sounded throughout the ship, Elena felt a grim certainty settle over her. The withdrawal from peace talks had been necessary, but it had set in motion events that would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. Whatever happened next, there would be no return to the status quo. Humanity had declared its independence from Council authority. Now, they would have to defend it. At Sigma Colony, the situation had deteriorated rapidly. 3 Verari frigates had taken up attack positions around the station, their weapon systems powered and targeting locks engaged. Station Commander Jensen had evacuated all non-essential personnel to the emergency shelters in the station's core, but the outcome seemed inevitable. They're hailing us again, the communications officer reported. Jensen nodded grimly. Put them through! The harsh features of a Verari military commander filled the main screen. This is your final warning, human. Power down your shields and prepare to be boarded. This station is now under Council authority by emergency provision. This is a civilian supply station in sovereign Earth territory, Jensen replied steadily. Your presence here is an act of war under the Galactic Concordance. The Virari commander's expression remained impassive. The provisions of the Concordance no longer apply to Earth facilities, following your withdrawal from Council negotiations. You have 5 minutes to comply before we open fire. As the transmission ended, Jensen turned to his security chief. Status of the distress call? Confirmed receipt by Ardentian listening posts, came the reply. But no response yet regarding assistance. Jensen's jaw tightened. Maintain shields at maximum. Begin emergency power conservation protocols. We need to buy as much time as possible. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. 4 minutes. 3, 2. Sir, the sensor operator called suddenly. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. 22 vessels. Jensen moved quickly to the sensor display, expecting to see Virari reinforcements. Instead, his eyes widened in surprise. Those are Carrion-Solarian configurations. Earth allies. A new transmission came through. The holographic projection showing the stern features of Commander Briggs, the Ardentian military liaison to Earth forces. Sigma Colony. This is Commander Briggs of the Carrion-Solarian Battle Group. We have your distress call. Stand by for assistance. Without further communication, the Allied fleet accelerated toward the Virari frigates, their superior numbers and firepower immediately apparent. The Virari vessels, caught by surprise, attempted to regroup into a defensive formation. They're powering weapons, the sensor operator reported. On the main screen, they watched as the leading edge of the Earth Allied fleet opened fire. Precision energy beams lanced across space, targeting the Virari frigate's propulsion systems and weapons arrays. The battle was brief and decisive. Within minutes, all 3 Virari vessels were disabled, drifting helplessly in space. Commander Briggs appeared on screen again. Sigma Colony. The hostile forces have been neutralized. We're establishing a defensive perimeter around your position. Be advised that Captain Graves has activated Protocol Shattered Shield. All Earth outposts are to implement maximum security measures immediately. Jensen felt a surge of relief mixed with concern. Protocol Shattered Shield was a near wartime footing. Understood, Commander. And thank you. Don't thank me, Briggs replied grimly. Thank the Ardentians for forwarding your distress call, and Captain Graves for authorizing our response. This is just the beginning, I fear. As the Allied fleet secured the area around Sigma Colony, the captured Virari vessels were boarded and their crews detained. The evidence was irrefutable, an unprovoked attack on a civilian Earth facility, ordered directly by Counselor Drellis as a punitive measure. Commander Briggs ensured that full documentation of the incident, including the Virari commander's own admission that they were acting under Council emergency provisions, was transmitted to all neutral worlds and even to the Council itself. The message was clear. Attacks on Earth installations would be met with overwhelming force, and the galaxy would bear witness. Back at Veros Prime, the Council's deadline had expired. The 5 Virari cruisers surrounding the ISS Aegis began to close their containment pattern, preparing to physically prevent the Earth vessel from departing. They're activating tractor beam systems, Lieutenant Keller reported. Elena nodded. Right on schedule. Execute slingshot maneuver on my mark. The bridge crew tensed as the massive warship's engines roared to life. Instead of attempting to break away from Veros Prime toward open space, the ISS Aegis dove toward the planet, accelerating at maximum thrust. Virari vessels adjusting course to pursue, Williams announced. They appear confused by our trajectory. They should be, Elena replied. No one in their right mind flies toward a gravity well at this velocity. The ISS Aegis plunged closer to Veros Prime, the planet's massive bulk filling the viewports. Gravitational alarms blared across the bridge as the ship's structural integrity systems strained against the increasing pull. "Approaching slingshot coordinates," the navigation officer called out. "Gravitational stress approaching maximum tolerable levels." "Hold course," Elena commanded, her knuckles white as she gripped the arms of her captain's chair. "Prepare for hyperspace jump on my mark." The pursuing Ferrari cruisers had fallen behind, unwilling to follow the Earth vessel on its suicidal trajectory. They maintained a higher orbit, likely expecting the ISS Aegis to lose control and crash into the planet's atmosphere. "Maximum gravitational acceleration achieved," the navigation officer reported. "Hyperspace calculations complete. Jump window opening in 3, 2, 1. "Execute jump," Elena ordered. The stars stretched into lines as the ISS Aegis, catapulted to tremendous speed by Veros Prime's gravity, tore a hole in space-time and vanished into hyperspace. The maneuver had worked perfectly, using the planet's gravity to achieve jump velocity while still within its orbital influence, a feat considered technically impossible by standard navigation protocols. As the blue-white tunnel of hyperspace enveloped the ship, a ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew. They had escaped the Council's trap and were now racing toward Earth space at maximum hyperspace velocity. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning to her communications officer. "Send word to all Earth colonies and outposts. The ISS Aegis has broken the Council blockade and is en route to coordinate our response, and transmit the Sigma colony attack data on all frequencies. The galaxy needs to see what happens when the Council feels its authority threatened." Word of the twin developments, the attack on Sigma colony, and the ISS Aegis's daring escape from Veros Prime, spread rapidly across galactic information networks. On dozens of worlds, citizens gathered around public broadcasts, witnessing the escalating confrontation between Earth and the Galactic Council. The Council's official channels attempted to frame the events as necessary responses to Earth's dangerous provocation. But the evidence provided by Earth's broadcasts told a different story. The complete negotiation records, combined with footage of the unprovoked attack on a civilian installation, painted a damning picture of Council overreach. On Ardentia, public demonstrations in support of Earth grew larger by the hour. Chancellor Vex, responding to popular pressure, issued a statement condemning the attack on Sigma colony and calling for an emergency session of the Council to reconsider its approach to Earth. Similar scenes played out on Helen and several other neutral worlds. Even on Tarkin, traditionally aligned with Council interests, the merchant guilds began quietly ignoring the Council's economic sanctions against Earth, maintaining vital trade routes through unofficial channels. In the Council chamber on Veros Prime, an emergency session had devolved into open conflict between factions. Syndic Vera and her allies, from the moderate Council worlds, confronted Councillor Drellis directly. "You have precipitated a crisis that threatens the very foundation of the Council's authority," Vera declared, her crystalline features rigid with anger. "The attack on Sigma colony violated our most basic principles." Drellis, his azure skin darkened with emotion, stood defiant. "I acted to preserve Council authority in the face of human defiance. The Ferrari fleet merely attempted to secure a strategic facility, a civilian supply station." The Tarkin representative, High Commissioner Jor, interjected. "With no military significance whatsoever, the evidence is already circulating throughout the galaxy. Counselor, the Council's reputation suffers with every transmission." "And now," added the Oricth delegate, mandibles clicking in agitation, "we have reports of increased military activity throughout Earth space. Their colonies are activating defensive grids. Their patrol fleets are mobilizing, all because of your unauthorized provocation." Drellis looked around the chamber, realizing that support for his hardline approach was evaporating. Even some of his fellow Ferrari appeared uncomfortable with the escalation. "The humans must be contained," he insisted, but with less conviction. Their growing military presence threatens the balance of power that has maintained peace for centuries. A balance of power that excluded them, Vera countered. Is it surprising they sought to protect themselves when faced with terms that would have left them defenseless? The debate continued for hours, but the momentum had shifted. Reports from across the galaxy indicated growing support for Earth's position, particularly after the documentation of the Sigma colony attack spread. Economic pressure was mounting as well, as neutral worlds began questioning the Council's sanctions. Finally, facing a coalition of moderate Council members and increasing external pressure, Drellis found himself isolated. The Council President, a venerable Orycth who had remained neutral throughout the crisis, called for a formal vote on the Earth situation. The result was decisive. By a significant majority, the Council voted to rescind the most severe demands presented during the peace talks and to condemn the attack on Sigma Colony as unsanctioned and contrary to Council principles. It was a stunning reversal and a humiliating defeat for Drellis and the hardline faction. But the true test would come in the form of Earth's response. Would Captain Graves and her allies accept this concession? Or had the confrontation progressed too far for simple diplomatic solutions? Aboard the ISS Aegis, now safely within Earth-controlled space and surrounded by a protective screen of Allied vessels, Elena received the Council's official communication with skepticism. "They're backpedaling," she observed to Victor and Commander Briggs, who had joined them via secure holographic link from the Carrion-Solarian battle group, trying to salvage their reputation after the Sigma debacle. The evidence was too compelling to ignore, Victor agreed, particularly with the neutral worlds threatening economic consequences. The Council may control many systems, but they still require resources and trade from the independent sectors. "So, what do we do now?" Commander Briggs asked. "Accept their retraction and return to negotiations?" Elena's expression hardened. "Not under the same terms. If the Council wants peace with Earth, they'll need to offer substantive guarantees. No more demands for demilitarization, no more restrictions on our border planets, and compensation for the attack on Sigma Colony." "They won't like that," Victor cautioned, "especially the compensation demand. It implies Council culpability." "Good," Elena replied firmly. "Because they are culpable. Drellis may have been the driving force, but the entire Council allowed those outrageous demands to be presented. They need to acknowledge their mistake, publicly and formally." Commander Briggs nodded in agreement. "The Ardentians and Hellenites will support that position. They've committed significant resources to our defensive perimeter already." Elena turned to the tactical display, where the positions of Earth forces and their allies were clearly mapped against potential Council incursion routes. The mobilization under Protocol Shattered Shield had been remarkably effective, creating a unified defensive network across human-controlled space in a matter of days. "Prepare a response to the Council," she instructed Victor. "Make our position clear. Earth will consider renewed negotiations only when the Council publicly admits its error in attempting to force our compliance, retracts all economic sanctions, and agrees to compensate the victims of the Sigma Colony attack." As Victor departed to draft the response, Elena studied the galactic map with a mixture of pride and concern. Humanity had stood firm against overwhelming pressure and had even secured valuable allies in the process. But the crisis had also revealed the fragility of galactic institutions and the persistent threat posed by factions like the Virari. Whatever peace eventually emerged from this confrontation would need to account for these realities. Earth could no longer trust in the benevolence of older powers. It would need to secure its own position through strength and alliance. The news of Earth's demands spread quickly through galactic information networks. On countless worlds, citizens followed the unfolding drama with fascination and concern. The confrontation between the young human civilization and the ancient Galactic Council had captured the imagination of the galaxy, sparking debates about authority, sovereignty, and the proper balance of power. On Veros Prime, The Council found itself in an unprecedented situation. The evidence of their overreach, combined with the failed attack on Sigma Colony, had severely damaged their moral authority. Neutral worlds that had traditionally deferred to Council decisions were now openly questioning their judgment. In a hastily convened emergency session, the Council debated Earth's demands. The atmosphere was tense, with Councillor Drellis notably subdued as he faced criticism from all sides. "This is outrageous," he muttered, a shadow of his former confidence. "They demand we humiliate ourselves publicly." "They demand accountability," Syndic Vera corrected, something the Council has rarely had to provide in its long history. The Oryx Council President, his compound eyes, reflecting the light from the chamber's central data display, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "The evidence is incontrovertible. The demands presented to Earth were indeed excessive, particularly in light of their assistance during the Trivar crisis. And the attack on Sigma Colony was a clear violation of established protocols." "So we simply capitulate?" Drellis asked incredulously. "We acknowledge reality," the President replied. "Our position is untenable. The neutral worlds are already establishing direct trade agreements with Earth, despite our sanctions. The Ardentians and Hellenites have committed military assets to their defense. Even some Council-affiliated worlds are questioning our handling of this situation." High Commissioner Jor of Tarkin nodded in agreement. "My world's merchant guilds report widespread sympathy for the human position. The economic impact of continued conflict would be significant." After hours of debate, the outcome became inevitable. By a decisive majority, the Council voted to accept Earth's terms, including the public acknowledgement of error and the compensation for Sigma Colony. A formal transmission was prepared, to be broadcast throughout the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council would admit to a serious misjudgment in its dealings with a younger species. Councillor Drellis, as the primary architect of the failed strategy, was required to deliver the statement personally. Standing before the Council's ceremonial transmission array, his azure features rigid with suppressed emotion, he addressed the camera. "The Galactic Council acknowledges that errors were made in our recent negotiations with Earth," he began, each word clearly costing him significant pride. "The terms presented during the peace talks exceeded reasonable boundaries and failed to respect Earth's legitimate security concerns. Furthermore, the Council recognizes that the recent military action at Sigma Colony was unauthorized and contrary to our established principles." The broadcast continued, detailing the Council's commitment to fair negotiations, the immediate lifting of all sanctions, and the establishment of a compensation fund for those affected by the Sigma Colony attack. It concluded with a formal invitation for Earth to resume discussions on a more equitable basis. Throughout human space, the broadcast was met with a mixture of vindication and cautious optimism. Earth had stood firm against pressure from the galaxy's oldest political entity, and had emerged not only intact, but with its position strengthened. On the bridge of the ISS Aegis, Elena watched the transmission with Victor and her senior officers. When it concluded, a moment of silence fell over the group. "The Council admits its blunder," Victor said, finally, a note of wonder in his voice. "I never thought I'd see the day." "They had no choice," Elena replied. "We exposed their true intentions and demonstrated our resolve. More importantly, we showed the galaxy that the Council isn't infallible." "So what happens now?" Commander Williams asked. "Do we return to negotiations?" Elena considered the question carefully. "Eventually, yes. But on our terms, with our allies present, and with full transparency. No more closed-door sessions where the Council can present one face publicly and another privately." The response from Earth Command arrived shortly afterward, confirming Elena's approach. Earth would resume diplomatic engagement with the Council, but from a position of strength and independence. The new negotiations would include representatives from Ardentia and Helen, ensuring that the Council could not isolate humanity again. In the days that followed, A new political reality began to take shape across the galaxy. The Earth-Ardentia-Helen Alliance, formalized in what became known as the New Galactic Compact, established itself as a counterbalance to Council authority. Smaller worlds, traditionally dominated by Council interests, increasingly looked to this new alliance as an alternative source of security and trade. The Council itself underwent internal reforms, with moderate factions gaining influence at the expense of hardliners like the Virari. Councillor Drellis, his reputation irreparably damaged by the failed strategy against Earth, was recalled by his government and replaced by a more conciliatory representative. 1 month after the Council's public admission of error, the formal peace negotiations resumed. This time, they were held not in the Council chamber on Veros Prime, but in neutral space, aboard a specially constructed diplomatic vessel at the midpoint between Earth and Council territory. Elena, still commanding the ISS Aegis, which maintained a watchful position nearby, observed the proceedings with cautious optimism. The new Virari representative had adopted a noticeably more respectful tone, and the presence of Ardentian and Hellenite delegations ensured balanced discussions. "It's a new era," Victor commented, as they reviewed the day's negotiation summary in Elena's ready room. "The balance of power has shifted, not dramatically, perhaps, but significantly enough to change the calculation." Elena nodded, studying the galactic map displayed on her personal terminal. Earth's position had indeed improved markedly since their dramatic withdrawal from the peace talks. Their alliance network had expanded, their military readiness had been proven, and their diplomatic credibility had increased throughout the neutral sectors. "We've gained much," she acknowledged, "but we've also learned how quickly peace can unravel when built on unequal terms." "A lesson the Council needed as well," Victor observed. "For too long, they've dictated terms to younger species without meaningful accountability." Elena rose from her desk and moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars beyond. "This won't be the end of it, you know. The Virari and their allies will regroup, develop new strategies. The fundamental tensions remain." "Of course," Victor agreed. "But we've demonstrated that humanity won't be bullied or marginalized. That alone changes the equation for generations to come." As she contemplated the vast expanse of space, Elena felt the weight of what they had accomplished, and of the challenges that still lay ahead. Humanity had secured its independence from Council domination, but with that independence came greater responsibility. They were now a recognized power in galactic affairs, with all the complexities that entailed. The path forward would require continued vigilance, strategic alliance building, and a delicate balance between strength and diplomacy. But for the first time since humanity had ventured beyond their solar system, they would negotiate that path as equals, not supplicants. Earth had withdrawn from peace talks when those talks became a mechanism for subjugation. In doing so, they had forced the Galactic Council to admit its blunder and reconsider its approach to an emerging power. It was a victory not just for humanity, but for the principle that true peace could only be built on mutual respect and fair treatment. As the negotiations continued and a new galactic order began to take shape, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, today, humanity stood tall among the stars. "Prepare my final report for Earth Command," she instructed Victor. "Title it, Lessons Learned, the Withdrawal Strategy, and its Implications." As Victor nodded and departed, Elena remained at the viewport, watching as distant stars twinkled against the void. The galaxy was vast and full of both danger and opportunity. Humanity had proven itself capable of navigating its complexities, standing firm when necessary, and building alliances based on mutual interest. It was not the end of their story, but perhaps the true beginning, the moment when humanity truly became a galactic power in its own right, with all the responsibilities and possibilities that entailed. The Council had admitted its blunder, but the greater victory was what that admission represented: Recognition, at last, of humanity's rightful place among the stars.